Welcome to this BILT webinar series. We're going to be talking about workforce development and more specifically how we're modernizing training and enablement specific to the trades and skilled trade organizations and jobs. Let's introduce our panelists for today. I'm super excited to be working with this crew. Erich Dietz, I'm an executive vice president with BILT. My role in this is purely kind of moderator. The brains of this operation is going to be between Natasha and David. So why don't we lead out with Natasha? Why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll hand over to Dave.
Awesome. Thanks. Great to be with you all. I'm sorry for the little raspy voice here. As I shared, I also in my unpaid time coach 3- and 4-year-old cheerleading, which is much like I told them, herding butterflies. So hopefully it'll last through this. But in my paid job, I'm the executive director for the Independent Electrical Contractors Florida West Coast. It's a horrible name because we cover almost the entire state from the Panhandle to Jacksonville and down through down to the Keys. And I partner with a few counties on our southeast coast with our East Coast chapter. We run a 400-person plus apprentice program across the state, and that's really where this partnership was born back really less than a year ago, and really how we're reaching out to get those next next electricians. Our challenge was we had more retiring every day than we could hire, and we needed to solve that. And we got the opportunity to meet David at the Ideal National Champions. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but that's what we do. So I am constantly looking to hire electricians or future electricians as my paid job. In my non-paid job, I'm also on the State Apprenticeship Advisory Council down here in Florida, and I am president of the Florida Apprenticeship Association. So in my unpaid world, I'm looking out for all of our trades and just really trying to help provide that other opportunity for students. On my sometimes published resume, it says I'm a recovering college for all addict. I used to run a high school where I thought I was going to save the world by getting every one of my students into college, until one of my students got a full ride to college and a year later came to me and said, I hate it and I want to work on cars. And how can you help me? And I said, well, let's get out of school at college and let's go find the right thing. And really led by my students. So hopefully I'm contributing to that now. And I'll turn it over to my partner in crime for the past about 11 months, David.
Thanks, Natasha. Appreciate that. Erich, thanks for having us today. And thank you, audience, for participation. And hopefully we can stir some questions in you and get a conversation started and just not have us talking to you, but talking with you. So thank you to the BILT crew for having us. So yeah, Dave Quatela. I had our creative services division of the electrical products arm of Siemens. So in a nutshell, I get to make cool stuff every day and work with cool people. Very excited about the opportunity here to speak about what Siemens has done to, I guess, move the ball forward in terms of trends in modernizing training, working with great partners such as the IEC and of course BILT. I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that here as we move along. Just really excited to be here. We see a lot of noise and a lot of language written out there about workforce development and what's being done or the need to do something. And I want you all to know that we're getting there, right? This is a starting point. We're making some moves. And as Natasha spends her non-paying job coaching and doing other things, I'm a coach myself. I coach youth football and youth baseball, and it really does take a total team effort. There's not one superstar or one individual or entity that can change the world. And that's what we're trying to do here together is just that, is modernize this wonderful industry that we're in, get more people engaged, and get them to be lifers like myself. So.
Right on. Appreciate it,
Thanks.
Folks. It was a great kind of intro to your background, and I mean, frankly, love what you both are doing, and just absolutely thrilled to be a part of it. As we kind of pivot to the meat of our topic here today, and Natasha, this is something you kind of hinted at, when you were talking about your intro. Like, they're at the 30,000 foot level, and this goes well beyond obviously electricians, but when we think about skilled trades and trades more general, I mean, frankly, it's kind of terrifying. this business in North America as well as globally, we're staring down the barrel of just an absolutely massive shortage. And there's a lot of companies, and I would even say it, just from my day-to-day life as a consumer, it's terrifying when you think about the potential impact of these shortages. We're genuinely, there will be a ton more work than there are hands to actually do that. So it's kind of, what are we doing about things? And so my style here is I'm not going to read and drain the entire slide. I think the audience can dissect this themselves, but I kind of sit back and say, all right, you guys are living this, right? Natasha, your world with IEC, you're trying to attract, train, retain. Dave, you relative to Siemens and Siemens more broadly, like, how do we attract, train, retain?
Yeah.
I would just be kind of curious from your perspective as genuine boots on the ground. Like, I know everyone agrees there's a talent shortage, but it's just like, give us some kind of real world examples of what this means for your industry, as well as kind of macroeconomic implications as well.
Yeah, I would say, Eric, if you don't mind, I'll I guess kick us off. Thanks.
Too late, man. You already jumped in.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of a microphone. I think you guys know that by now, and you can see from the guitars behind me. I like a stage. The employment of electricians is projected to grow about 6% over the next 10 years. That is I guess the faster than average for any other occupation out there, which is incredible, right? And that speaks to the fact of turnover, folks leaving the trades for whatever reason. You mentioned recruitment and retain, but there is an enormous need over those next 10, 15 years, because this is the future, right? We need to maintain the infrastructure. You drive over these roads and you drive over these bridges and you look at all these buildings. There's some old infrastructure out there. So not only maintain it, but to continue to grow it. So huge impact there, with that being the largest, fastest growing occupation out there. But in terms of from a manufacturer's point of view, you have the installer side, right? And that's who Natasha's working with, right? The future electrical contractors. But what about the manufacturing, right? We need folks to come in and actually put this stuff together so that those electricians can go and install it, right? So with Siemens, we have multiple factories throughout North America, expanding constantly, it seems like, due to demand. And we need to bring folks in that may be working in retail or in the restaurant industry and teach them in a very efficient, fast, but also safe manner in order to be proficient in building these materials that Natasha's folks are going to go and install. And it's hard, right? I think we may talk about it here in a little bit, but retention rates being what they are, and the generation now that have shorter attention spans, that's biology, right? It's not Dave's telling it, it's the way it is. We need to be where their eyes are, right? And we need to get away from PowerPoint presentations. No offense, this is great. We need to get away from PowerPoint presentations and lecturing and thick 800-page textbooks, and hit these digital natives, where their heart is, which is their phone, their tablet. They carry it with them everywhere. They're using it in the classroom. My 12-year-old, who's in 7th grade, just sent a request for an app to download. I'm like, aren't you in school? He's like, yeah, but we're doing editing of this video that we just made. I'm like, that's incredible, right? They're learning all these skills, right, on this little device. So we as an industry need to create content, need to create a means to expedite the training, and to go from a 9-10 month, sometimes year-long lead time of getting folks up to speed down to 3 months to keep up with demand.
Dave, just to call out, you just shot at PowerPoint, you just shot at Zoom and webinars. I think the attendees just dropped too.
They just dropped. We lost everybody.
Yeah, we're not all good.
I tend to do that. I'm sorry.
No. Natasha, I'd be, genuinely curious. I have to imagine with the IEC, you've seen nothing but a groundswell, I don't of interest, or at least you're creating these opportunities. So, for
Yeah.
IEC, what is this talent shortage meant to you guys?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, so we kind of joke in Florida, people are always, whenever there's a hurricane coming, they're always like, hey, are you scared of the hurricane? And we're not scared of the hurricane. What we're scared of is no air conditioning after the hurricane. And if there's no electricity, then we're scared. And there's like 1,000 of you all who don't live in Florida moving here every day. So as we talk about the infrastructure and housing and schools, and everybody comes to retire here, so we need more hospitals. We are at the point where, and I guess to put it in real world, we talked, what are we really seeing? We help our contractors hire. And I used to have one that said they had 2 arms and 2 legs, we'll hire and we'll train them. Now they said if they're fogging up a mirror, we will hire and train them. They're not really worried about the 2 arms and 2 legs. And so there is at a point that we have to get that training moving quicker, but we have to get them in too. So we have to attract them. So that part, we're having to get them. And I was just talking with someone about Great American Teaching, and well, what age are you going to try? Is this high school kids? I'm like, high school, middle school, elementary, already graduated, in another career, in prison, in housing. They're all who we're trying to. And so we've got to figure out what that method is to reach them and to speak in their language. So for us, it's contractors not being able to bid on jobs. They literally cannot bid because they know they don't have the labor to do it. Let's extrapolate that a little bit farther. Even if they had the labor, they know Dave doesn't have the labor to build the product that they need. So there's an 82-week lead on the piece they need to be put in because they can't build it there. So it's not one industry, it is talent shortage. There are 3 million workers deficit. And so we have to start finding it. What I think is that there are some workforces out there that we need to figure out how to tap into quicker before we lose them to opportunities that then they're going to come back to us in their 30s and say, you know what, I went to college for a while. Not that college is bad. I have kids going after college. I have too many degrees, but they spend too much time because they didn't know this was an option. I had a 61-year-old graduate last year. Imagine if he'd been able to do this his whole life and what he could have impacted. So I think that's where you look at it, is that 7 million have dropped out because they've gotten into careers or they haven't gotten into careers. They've gotten to jobs that are not careers. And so they've dropped out. Then we aren't able to train them because we are looking at textbooks, and textbooks are not necessarily the language that we need to speak. And it's too slow, and it changes before the textbook can be even printed. So I think, and as looking at that, that's what as IEC we're looking at, is how do we train from a national organization across the country down into, little bitty Florida West Coast here. How do we speak the language to get them in? How do we entice them? How do we make it sexy so that they want and they will at least explore it? Because once they find it, it's an amazing career that they don't want to leave, time-wise, money-wise, benefits-wise. Get to see your project done. You drive by and you're like, I built that. Is an opportunity that is there. We have to figure out how to get them in. And as you said, keep them in.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to jump in because you hit on something here. Electrician employment, I'm just looking at your slide here, showing signs of growth. We know that, right? We kind of talked on that, men leaving the workforce. I think the conversation, like, starting now, and it should have started years ago, but it should start now, that we have an opportunity with workforce development and this surge of need to fill the demand. Other ethnicities outside of just white males, right? If you look at the numbers, 2% of electricians are women. So 98% of electricians are men, right? 14% women make up all of construction trades. That's an abysmal number.
Yeah.
And I want to say somewhere upwards of 71, 72% of all construction trades are men. And I get it, right? It's hard labor, it's hard work. But I've met many a female throughout our C school program, where we go out to community colleges and industry chapters, much like Natasha's, and we meet these amazing females that want to participate and be part of the conversation, and get their hands dirty, literally. But there's far too few of them, right? 1 or 2 per class. And we have to get rid of that stigma that this is a male dominated industry. and get the word out that this is open to any and all. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, it's great. And I think, we're definitely going to talk about kind of the training, like how and the different tools and technologies used for training. Like we're going to get to that in a minute. I just wanted to tug a little bit further on kind of the attract, train, and retain.
Mm-hmm.
In that, and Dave, you kind of hit on one of these, and I'm curious, Natasha, how you would respond to this. Like, what if you're speaking to the audience here, kind of giving them tips, if you will, like here's how to attract. And Dave, you referenced trying to connect with female aspiring electricians, trying to find them in community college environments. I'd just be curious, Natasha, for you, when you think about where are you finding veins to tap into relative to this next gen of talent? I mean, you reference prisons, you reference other facilities that don't immediately jump to folks' minds, most likely. So if you had to recommend, like, hey, here's a couple untapped population or pools of the population, what would you recommend to folks?
Well, you hit one of the big ones. I do think we have to look at our prison populations. Department of Corrections, Department of Juvenile Justice is one of those areas that heavily been just recently. I shared with you all about one of our success stories just recently, a young man out of prison he turned his life around in there and has no work. He's been in jail since he was 16, so no work history. But there's a great amount of workforce coming out that if we tap into, then it's going to cut down on recidivism, because if they have a job, we know that they're going to stay out of jail longer if they're working. This is a career in construction and electrical that works well because there's some policy and procedures that they've learned to follow. Are there some hurdles to jump through? Absolutely, like anything else. There's some background checks where they won't be able to work in certain jobs, but exploring that opportunity, which really does lend itself, and I'm not trying to jump ahead, but to some of this stuff that Dave and I've looked at creating in virtual reality and BILT, because there's some great training that we can do while they're inside before they come out. Some of those areas are really looking down into the middle school and high school areas, because by the time they get to high school, for so long we've kind of focused on high school, but by the time they're in high school in most states, they're already in a track. They're in a pre-college track. They're not in the tech classes where they can get in. They don't know that it's an option. So providing those, we are working with some of the migrant issues in Florida. So some of the migrant camp issues and opportunities there. It's a very seasonal employment. And if we can provide something that's steady, then that is a great resource for us as well. And then we have also, some military transitioning is the other area working into. I always say that our military vets make great electricians. They are used to getting up early. They are used to working in hard work, and they are used to life or death situations, which is everything that you're going to find on an electrical path. But also there's a lot of women, which we went back to, kind of transitioning in those same areas out of the military. We've met some great women transitioning out of some corrections institutions at some of the job fairs, and then going into places that we just normally haven't been, housing authorities, housing situations, the homeless shelters in the area. My call before this was those are areas that I think we need to be in, that the virtual reality, the app opportunities are key to getting to, are key in being able to present what we are talking about in a situation that is not, you can't always just take a ton of tools somewhere. And sometimes they're scary, what we found, especially for those who don't see them in construction. Some of the women that we talk to don't see themselves in construction until you can show them, you know what, you can do this, and you will excel in this. I have 3 daughters. I'd be over the moon proud if any of them went into this industry, because I think they would excel. And for many of them, they'd be able to own a business in just a few years because of some of the resources that are out there. But I think those are areas that we have to look at, attracting our new future tradesmen, let's say that, so we're not too electrician focused, but our tradespeople is from those areas.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, I think for those attending and whoever's going to hear this after the fact, just kind of, if anyone's even exploring those groups or thinking about it, I think, your endorsement of is outstanding. So let's just in the interest of time, we're going to pivot a little bit ahead and start talking a little bit more about, okay, let's assume to some extent we've attracted. Now it's about, how do we go about actually training. And so once again, I'm not going to read the details of the slide, but in essence saying, hey folks, if you want folks to retain information, you don't just give them a textbook, right? You don't just give them a simple visual cue. It's got to be multimodal. So I'd just be curious, and Natasha, thinking about the curriculum that y'all are building at IEC or have built in IEC, and just how are you leaning into, and your organization leaning into this kind of the how you train matters, and how you build curriculum matters. So I'd just be curious again, how are you pivoting to this and or leaning into this type of data?
So I think apprenticeship by nature already bends into, no pun intended, the kinesthetic, the visual, and the audio part of it, right? That's why the apprenticeship model works so well. It's because you're not just watching a teacher or reading a book. You're not just hearing. The model of apprenticeship is that you're working with an instructor, you're working on a job site, and you're working with your hands, whether it's typing or it's doing HR, it's IT, or you're bending conduit. What I've seen just in my short time with IEC, but in my long term in education, my prior world was a principal of a school, is seeing the integration of all those. Everybody will fall into one of these where they're stronger kinetic, stronger visual, stronger audio, but all put together like any puzzle piece comes together when you get all of the pieces in there. I've seen our curriculum development just from IEC National, so not IEC Florida, not what I've done with Dave, but national work on pieces they've put into. So there's still a textbook, but and still some PowerPoints because we're still there, but there's hands-on videos. There's flashcards that are they're provided on our program that are that interactive for students to rely on. But there's a whole team that's working on hands-on activities for students to be able to work with. But as we've done that, and that part has grown and has been great, I think there is the aspect of you can't really hands-on with someone the first time changing out a transformer that they might die on, right? So, it's okay to blow up in Dave's VR world. It's not a good idea to blow up in a lab in person. So there's some aspects that we are now taking that next step at how do we prepare our students, not only from a learning standpoint that you get to try it, but from a safety standpoint, right? Because there are things that you can do in VR that is much safer than doing in real life. So that aspect is an area. And so as IEC Florida West Coast and then IEC National has taken this step to partner with BILT and to partner with Siemens on the VR to provide those interactive and really the video, audio, and kinesthetic learning models, I think we're going to see a better retention rate of our students because they're going to understand it better. They're going to be better higher ROI for our contractors because they'll be learning more in the classrooms that they can do on the job. But I think part of that too is also what our electricians on the job who are being the mentors or being the supervisors can also use this. They can use that BILT app to see exactly what they're learning in the classroom to take over to the job site. And so you can go to Harvard and learn that this works, or you can just take it from the people who are working on, jobs, or you can take it from a 3-year-old. They know how to slide pictures on your phone, and no one had to teach them how to slide to find a picture on your phone. No one had to teach Dave's son how to open an app. He had to approve it, but no one had to teach him how to open and download the app. They know it. How to take selfies. And so we will continue to be relevant if we continue to stay in the genre that they're learning in, which is this video, audio, kinesthetic, which I think you're going to then see have some added on there ones that are going to grow. If we stick in that visual only, that this is a book and we're going to have a lecturer stand in front of you and listen to a voice droning on and on and on, we will continue to lose people out of the training and we will not build those that we need to. So I'm proud of what IEC National is doing and how they're trying to do the hands-on activities. And of course, I'm pretty proud of IEC Florida West Coast and trying to take these steps into doing that virtual reality and creating apps and learning on the fly and building the plane while we're flying it. I think this is the okay time to do that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And Dave, I think about in your environment, you're training or aspiring to train not only the next generation of talent that's going to come in, Siemens badged employees, whether it's in a manufacturing facility, whether it's a field technician or your distributor network that you're also working to train. So talk to us a little bit about how you're leaning into this.
Yeah, sure. Well, Natasha mentioned it, and thank you for doing that. But just to give some context, Natasha mentioned, VR relationship and VR partnership with Siemens. My team created our own virtual reality platform, which would enable the user to assemble, install, learn about product solutions, whether it be Siemens or other non-competes, if you will, without the fear of failure, right? Or the fear of consequence. And that's something I'm super high on, is that experiential training, right? Statistics show that you're going to retain 10% on what I say if you're listening to audio only, and only about 20 to 25%, with the PowerPoint and me talking. That's not a whole heck of a lot. However, if we were to incorporate you actually doing the work, doing the assembly in a safe, controlled environment, I can get you to retain upwards of over 75% of that information, which again makes that apprentice, makes that student more valuable to their employer, but more importantly, makes them safer. They would have seen what to do on a job site in a classroom, right? And be able to work through the mechanics of that, make mistakes, fail. We learn from our failures, right? There's no mistake about it. And if you're not failing, then you're not trying too hard, is my, that's my take anyway.
Sound like a coach, Dave.
Yeah, I sound like a little bit of a coach there, I know. And the thing is, with all the folks that are getting ready to retire over the next 5 to 7 years, I think the average age of the US electrician is 54, 55 years old, right around there. We need a place to house all that information, right? We need that transfer of knowledge. And working with Natasha and her group, working with other IEC chapters, we're able to harness a lot of that information from these subject matter experts, put it into an environment that's evergreen, right? Theory doesn't change, right? But maybe the mechanics of doing assembly or working on a various product may have a little nuance here or there. We can incorporate that in these digital solutions, which is very, very powerful. And you put that in the hand of an 18 to 25-year-old who's learning about Ohm's law or learning about AC, DC, but then go and practice it on that transformer that Natasha mentioned. Again, in a controlled environment without the fear of consequence, is huge. And that's my motivation. That's my why, is to help that next generation and again, push the ball forward. Another stat I'd written down here, so apologize if I'm looking down off the screen. VR users learned 4 times faster than traditional methods. That's crazy. And are 275% more confident to apply those skills in the field, right? So you put on the headset, you use your phone, because it's XR, right? You can do web, you can do phone, tablet, goggles. It doesn't have to be, just a headset only. 275% more confident. So they're walking in with their shoulders back, chest out, ready to conquer their day, knowing that they had seen it before, done it before, know what the pitfalls could be, avoid them, and be more efficient for their employer, be safer for their employer, and maybe teach the seasoned vet that's on the job site a thing or two as well while they're at it, which is great, because then we bring that 360-degree learning into the mix, which I think we could use a little bit more of as well. One other piece here, in the classroom environment, when we want to teach on products and solutions, we rely on video, we rely on textbook, because you just can't get the product in there. I can't provide Natasha, 10 transformers, and a couple switchboards and some unit substations. It's not economically sound.
82
right?
weeks out on delivery.
Yeah. And B, there's no space for that. Right. So how can we build models to scale to mimic using that product in real life? Right. That's something that we're striving to achieve through our VR platform. And we've had some great success thus far, and more to come for sure. So,
Dave, you brought up something earlier where you're talking about and these weren't your exact words, but in essence, you've got the very seasoned folks are aging out or retiring out. Like they're leaving the journey man or woman that's been around for, 30, 50 years.
Yeah.
Clearly, one of the ways to leverage and maximize your time with them before they go is to try to get whatever's in their head, and build it into digital content. Like that's kind of one thing that I'm taking away from what you said.
Yeah.
But when you think about kind of mentoring or, still using them in the field, sounds terrible. But in terms of, again, are there other ways you would recommend businesses engage this more senior layer in their, workforce before they go? Besides just putting them in a room saying, hey, give me a brain dump and I'll take it and go with it. Like how else are you engaging them to, again, maximize the time you got?
Yeah, I mean, one idea that we've had on the team, and I don't know if Maddie's on the call here, because I want to give credit where it's due. It was her idea, Maddie Everhart, who works for me in our creative team. The idea being that with these folks that are, nearing retirement or have retired but still itching to maybe get back and give back, we offer the C-School program, as I mentioned, and I don't want to talk about all the stuff that we do and all that. We offer this program and we go to these different schools. We do provide some product. We provide the digital learning tools and access to our Siemens University trainings. But an idea she had was, for those folks that have retired or getting ready to retire, why not look at these different markets where they're sitting and kind of transition them to not necessarily an instructor role, but maybe a guest speaker role, right? Have them come in and talk about the real world, right? The instructors have all done it before, but take it from the perspective of a manufacturer, take it from a perspective of a distributor, take it from a perspective of that electrical contractor, and give back that way as kind of a guest speaker, guest lecturer, guest professor, if you will. And Natasha could probably speak this better than I can, because I'm not an instructor there, and I don't live in the chapter world as much as I'd love to be there more often. But the students that I've met with over the last 3-4 years running this program, close to 3,500 or so students I've talked to, not all of them want to be on the hot roof in Texas or in a cold basement in Boston, right? Working on gear. They want to be exposed to manufacturing, or distribution. And instead of using my hands and my mind, I kind of just want to use my mind and build projects, build bills of material, work on designs, use 3D models to do design build if I'm an electrical contractor, right? Not necessarily be out there in the field. And we want to expose them to that. And I think the ability of getting in the head of some of these folks that had the 30, 40, 50 years of experience working in all these different facets, or working with folks that are in the manufacturing or distribution world, is super important, right? Super important. Yeah. And so that was Maddie's idea, like getting some, market type all-stars coming in and doing some guest lecturing is something that Siemens is looking into to doing with some of our C-School partners.
Right on. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move us ahead. We got just 2 more slides of content, just so everyone's out there. And these will ideally stimulate some additional dialogue that the attendees can pull something from. So this is, a little bit more of a specific generational, perspective that we'd be looking to kind of harness from you all. Again, some of these things we've talked about in terms of Gen Z specifically don't like textbooks. We all get it. We understand the attention span. Like, maybe I have to put myself in the Gen Z bucket. Like, I'm a goldfish myself, 6 seconds gone. And the other thing that I think is a lot of people don't always realize is just the level of mechanical inclination, or lack thereof, for some of these younger generations. Like, it's a thing. It's a real thing. I know with, my kids and their friends come over, they're trying to wonder, hey, is this a left-handed or a right-handed screwdriver? I don't know, right? These are the questions they're trying to solve for. So I think where I'd like you guys to take us in this would be, when it comes to recruiting Gen Z, have you found anything that we haven't already discussed, right, that's meaningful to get them in? Because I have to imagine, like, if they show up and they see, hey, welcome to IEC or welcome to Siemens, go read that stack of textbooks, like, they're turning around and walking out, right? It's no bueno. So I'd just be curious in terms of, what do you believe that are like the success criteria to engage this generation? Assuming we're going to pull from some of the innovative pockets of the population we spoke to earlier, but it's like, once you've at least engaged them in a conversation, what have you found Gen Z wants in order to get them to stay and lean into your respective programs? And Natasha, why don't we have you lead out on this one?
So I think a couple questions there we kind of chatted on, but one, I think one of the important things as you're talking to Gen Z, and you put some of it on here, is it's not trained to memorize, but they're taught how to access information. So they want to know that that information is there and they can find it. It goes back to, your high school math teacher who told you, you have to learn your math, multiplication tables, because you're not going to have a calculator with you all the time. And now I want to be like, I got a calculator with me all the time. And so that's part of speaking their language. And I think also is showing them the path. Gen Zs also want the opportunity to advance and to pick where they advance from, and not be stuck for many years where I'm just happy with this job, I'll stay there till an opportunity comes and then I'm going to move up within my own company. They're going to zigzag to try to advance. And I think that technology that we're talking about allows us to show them some of where they can go, especially in in the electrical career. So like, you're a helper, you're an apprentice, now you're a project manager or a superintendent, and then you can go off anywhere. You can be an estimator, you can be the 3D model. And so I think that's one aspect, that speaking their language is also talking about where they want to go. Their goals are different. Yes, they want to make good money, but the culture and where they work is important too. What are they going to get to do? Who are they going to get to learn from? Who are those experts who might be retiring that they can learn from? But they're going to see it as, that's an open spot for me to take, and how do I get there? And so what we've also talked about, and what really developing and attracting these, is to create those visuals. And for us, we're looking at it from a VR BILT app aspect of that they can take and they can manipulate and they can play with and they can see that they can do it. And it's taking away some of that, I'm scared, I don't know what this is, which we talked about earlier. Like, I'm too scared, I don't have any experience in the electrical world, I might blow something up, to, oh my gosh, this is good, I can do this. If I can, if I can build something in whatever alternate universe that I'm building on my little game, I can now also build a real world in virtual reality, which means then maybe I'll take the next step. And kind of how we set up our program was, they're going to virtual reality bend some conduit, and then they're going to virtually deal with a single pole switch, but then we're going to walk them inside, hopefully to our area, to show them that you can actually do it with real tools. And all of a sudden we've broken down those steps. So those small bits of success are what really drive Gen Z. So if I got this, then I move to here, then I move to here, then I move to here. They're not here to here. Well, I'm in a straight, right? They're little bitty steps. And that's what we get that opportunity to do, is to have those, and then they can take it home. They're not huge question askers in front of people. They also survived this whole pandemic where we live in a virtual world and we don't have that. So they're not the ones that are as much to raise their hand and ask a question, but if they can take an app home that shows them, they can work out the question in their own mind at home. So that's what we're seeing through some of those aspects is, their attention span isn't long, but they're going to come back to it. So I only want to look at this for a few minutes. I don't want to ask my question here, but I'm going to go home after class. And if I can pull up something that shows me on my phone, what did they say about measuring that conduit, or how do I bend it, or where do I put my hand? I'm in a safe space to do that.
That's right. And
now I come back to class a little bit better prepared, or I come onto the job screen a little bit better prepared.
Natasha, are you implying that there's a mobile app out there that allows
there might be a mobile
take,
app out there,
like 3D interactive tutorial content home?
Yeah. Yes, there's a bunch.
Like,
you can even learn how to light charcoal on an app, which I found.
That sounds like witchcraft. Absolute witchcraft.
Who knew? Who thought? I come up with things every day that should be on an app. But it truly is because it's easy, accessible. It speaks their language. It's accessible at any time. You can't call your instructor at midnight. I mean, I guess you could, but they probably not answer. But you can pull out your app. You can, go on a tablet and do some VR, look at the XR. And that's the world they live in. My kid's learning more online at midnight, in her room, and I'm not going to fight it, because then she's going to do well in the class, and that's how they learn.
Yeah, appreciate it. Dave, what do you got? What do you got on Gen Z for us?
I would, geez, Natasha, she nailed it. And I would just reiterate that building that quiet confidence is such a worthwhile thing to get into, right? Or venture to go down, right? The ability to, because not everyone's an alpha, right? They're not going to always want to raise their hand and be up front and center. It's that shy, quiet person sitting in the back, that you're not quite sure whether they're getting it or not because they're not speaking up, but that they're at home or have the ability to be at home and to pull up some type of application on a phone, tablet, PC, headset, and do the work on their own. We visited a C-school partner in Bellingham, Washington some time ago. And when we introduced the idea of VR and we put it on the headset, the student was, I think, 20 years old. And he said, so I can go home and build panels on my own. This is amazing, right? Because they don't have they have to wait their turn to do it in the classroom, or, maybe the product gets damaged, right? It loses its integrity over time if people keep torquing it up and down and whatnot. So the ability to go into a quiet environment in a comfortable space where they feel secure and learn, and then come back the next day with that confidence to raise their hand is something that's super motivating to me. Back in 22, there was a survey done of the top 50 electrical contractors, right? And they were asked, if you were to have a mobile app, what type of information would you want to access on it, right?
Okay.
And the top three answers were product specifications, code, and assembly and instruction information. And when I saw that, and I knew the vision I had in my head and our team's head of what we're trying to accomplish, it's like, wow, we're onto something here, right? Because in this slide is great to build up their relationship with our friends over here at BILT. Is, it is not witchcraft, right? It's a real tangible thing. The ability
Witchcraft
to
is cool.
the ability to put models on a platform that allows you to understand product a little bit better, understand the mechanics and the nuance, which I think is something can be missed in textbook and video for sure. But the ability to see nuance and then couple that in parallel with an immersive experiential training through VR is nothing short of game breaking, never mind game changing, but game breaking, in my humble opinion. So partnering with BILT and the ability to have our solutions on their platform, where we can get to that 18 to 25-year-old and beyond, right? Is amazing, right? And then again, couple that with putting on a headset and actually doing the assembly, doing the install, and then having that application in your back pocket to pull out as reference, to me is not only the current, but it's the future for sure.
And I think that's an important part too, because we're talking about Gen Z. But as we talk about Gen Z, we have to remember, as we just talked about, many of the electricians and many tradespeople are older generation, right? And we have to create a way to bring it together, right?
Yeah.
I face it a lot when you try to explain to senior contractors, we're going to have online classes. We have a huge online class. Well, how am I going to learn? How are my guys going to learn online? How are my gals going to learn online? I think that there is an aspect of the VR and the app that can start to bring that together to see, because when you can show what I learned in class on my app as bending conduit to my older superintendent to say, look, and they look at it and they're like, oh, okay, so like this app thing is helping. And I think because there's that level of jumping over, because we have this vast emptiness between our tradesmen here and here, because we had that college for everyone for so long where we didn't hire and no one wanted to go into the trades. So there's a gap here. So how do we cover, and how do we cross that, and how do we bring that gap smaller? And as counterintuitive as it may sound, I believe that things as technologically advanced as the VR, as an app, can actually make that communication a little bit better and to show
Mhm.
them this is what we're doing. And you can also relay exactly what I was taught in class was this. I can spin this way. I can spin it this way. I remember we were showing the app to one of our instructors. She's a master electrician.
I was just going to tell this story. That's
Okay, you
amazing.
tell the story because it's
No, it's
hilarious.
amazing that you're bringing it up. Go ahead. No,
She was scared to death. She's like, I am not doing that VR. I'm not putting a headset. It's not happening. Not going to do it.
Yeah.
And you know, she's a journeyman electrician, master electrician, taught all 4 years, an instructor of the year, you know, obviously brilliant lady, right? And she, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Well, she finally said, well, if you tell me to, you're my boss, I'll do it. So I'm like, okay, do it. So in front of, you know, Dave takes her out and puts on the headset and she's starting to climb the ladder virtually like this. It was kind of funny to start with, but then she got more into it. When she got off, she is the biggest, you know, disciple of VR and how it can change because she sees how it can change for her students.
Yeah.
She sees, knowing that she teaches high school kids up to 50, 60-year-olds, how this can change their understanding. And her point was, if I'm an old retired master electrician and I can see how it is going to change and enhance the education, then she said, then anybody should be able to see it. And she'll tell everybody about it now. And so it's really kind of dragging some of those people along, like, no, this is going to help. And I think these little bits, and everybody has one of these now, they will start to see that, which then will allow them to communicate as electricians and not as baby boomers, Gen Z. Now we're just electricians or we're tradespeople working together. And how are we going to move this forward? Because most of the tools they're going to be using, I mean, they're estimating their blueprints. Most of them aren't pulling out real blueprints anymore. They're zooming in and out on tablets. So I think it's going to be more of a uniting. Once we drag everybody together, it'll be more of a uniting force than whether it is something that kind of is that chasm in between.
Makes a ton of sense. So we're kind of coming down to the finish line here, folks. You know, these are just some of the high level things that clearly have been discussion points as we've spoken throughout the day in terms of having something that's mobile and in their pocket. You know, I think this was something, Natasha, you referenced earlier in terms of reducing that cognitive load in terms of putting assets in their hands that literally take them step by step. They don't have to jump all the way, whether at a micro level in an instruction or just even thinking about career pathing to some extent. It's like, give me the bite-sized chunks. One piece here, though, that we haven't spent a ton of time on that I think is, you know, potentially a good way to kind of to wrap this up is we think about feedback, right? I know for both of you, you're exceptionally passionate about your constituents. And I say that in the most, you know, heartfelt way. Like, you genuinely care about, you know, your version of customer, your version of employee, just recognizing, you know, kind of your businesses are slightly different. And like, you lean into that. You know, Dave, I've spent time with you traveling, you know, out there in the country and watching you engage with distributors and customers, et cetera. And so I'd welcome your perspectives on how do you kind of lean into those constituents and create this the feedback loop. And that's probably a better way for me to phrase the question, is kind of to share with the group in terms of how you've created feedback loops with your different levels of constituents. Because I think that's another thing that if I'm an attendee on this, how do I go learn? What's the best way to approach, engage, et cetera, to make me smarter and better in ultimately achieving the mission of attracting, training, retaining?
Yeah, I use this phrase a lot because it's true. I've never had an original thought, right? all of the best ideas have come from speaking with others, like subject matter experts like Natasha or Erich yourself. We just create the platform, right? All of the content that's baked in the platform, or what we strive to make in the future, are coming from those constituents, from those relationships that I and others within my organization have created and nurtured over the past, 5, 10. I've been in industry for 17 years, and I'm still talking to folks from day one, about what's going on in their market and how can we help. So relationship is number one, right? But also, being an open ear and the ability to adjust and pivot. And, we think we have the answers, but then we talk to the Natashas of the world and they're like, well, maybe if we shifted it this way instead of that way, it would have greater impact. And like, you know what, she's right. So let's do that. Right. In terms of where can you get information? I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I do a monthly video blog or vlog. I hate saying that word, vlog. It just sounds gross. Kind of like moist. It's gross. But I'm out there on LinkedIn once a month. Check me out there. But just reach out, right? I love having conversations about this topic. It's my why. And I say if you know your why, then you can burden the how, right? We'll figure out how to get there, but we'll get it done. We've worked with Natasha, we've worked with other IEC chapters in creating customized content. Again, talking to subject matter experts, give me the keys, and then we go ahead and then engineer a solution that's going to help in workforce development, but also classroom curriculum. Again, it's just listening, right? And not thinking you know everything, because I certainly don't. Like I said, never had an original thought. I love talking to my peers. I love talking to my mentors. And talking to folks in the audience here. If you have an interest in learning a little bit more about what we're doing for this cause, for modernized training within the trades, please reach out. Love to have a conversation and see how we could potentially help you out. Or if nothing else, let's just talk about what's going on in your world. And if we can help, we certainly will.
Appreciate it. Natasha, take us home.
I was gonna say part of it too on the data part and getting research. So the ability that we were able to do this VR and this BILT app was through a grant that we luckily were able to write. We had done some other stuff good, and they came back and said, "Would you like more money? And if so, give us a proposal." And I literally called. I was in Houston. No, I was in Cincinnati, and I called David and I'm like, "Hey, I have to have a proposal in 24 hours. Can you get with BILT and find out what it'll cost?" To do this. He got some numbers back, and then I think important is that data. And so we've been doing some data tracking of our students on their retention and our recruitment prior to this, following being able to implement this shortly, which will be because we'll be getting about 700 high school students in less than a month. No pressure, David, in a little bit. And so what does that recruitment look like? So what are those numbers? So I think data is important for us on this too. We're kind of showing it. And then honestly, it's those relationships. And I think Dave said it, or maybe it was you, Eric, being willing to fail forward and be able to, kind of, if this didn't work, we didn't hit it out of the park on the first one. We had some areas that we needed to fix. And it kind of goes back to one of your questions there too, about what about all that knowledge that's in their head? We reached out to our electricians, to our electrician partners and said, you write the content and come back. And then they did some stuff and they said, no, I don't remember because I'm not an electrician, but you need 3 of these things, not 2. So go back and put it. So it's a way of tapping that retiring or moving on, aging out electrician, but also just trying something, and it may not work. I had one boss who I love greatly, who said he told him, Natasha doesn't know how to think outside the box. She doesn't know where the box is. She's taken the box, she's folded it up, she made it into an origami bird, and she flew it somewhere. And they're not wrong, because I think a box is better as an origami bird. But I think that's the part that we've got to be willing to try, and we're not going to have it all right. And I think one thing that Siemens and BILT gave us the opportunity was we didn't have it all baked when we started either. No. We didn't have everything worked out. We didn't have every step worked out, because if we do that, that truly is kind of that older way of thinking. We just started trying to do it and build along, and not wait till everything was perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And so I think that was taking that feedback along the way, going back to bring it back to the question, is take the feedback along the way and make the changes. And it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have failed. It's okay to have not gotten it perfect. And that's also, as we're tying this up in a nice little bow, why something like online, virtual, visual, VR, AR works. I can change that a lot quicker than I can republish 4,000 textbooks that are 400 pages long. Yeah. And that those changes and modifications, because like we're writing an EV charger. Some of my curriculum team wrote an EV charging thing. They started it and it's already out of date. So we're already making updates. So as we move forward, it's the ability to be wrong and to get that data and say, hey, you know what? The data said we weren't right. Let's fix it. Instead of like the data said we were wrong, let's all go back in our cave and cry and just throw this out. So that's kind of my take on what this has been, is that we do have that ability to move forward, to give feedback, to fix it, and to have a culture that improving is what we want, not just like you said, if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah.
So I think we're trying.
I think that cultural element is huge. And I know both of your environments, you've created that culture. So kudos to you. I'm not going to lie here. One of the best nuggets I'm taking away from this is, Natasha, someone tries to put you in a box, you take that box, you fold it up and you make an origami bird. That's what I'm going to do with the box you try to put me in. I love it. That's more of a, you can learn the meaning of life on this, or at least how to approach your life on this podcast, webinar, just the same. As we wrap up here, I'll do a shameless plug for our sponsors, just for any of those who have BILT comments or questions or want to find us. For Natasha and Dave, I think you both would say this. You're both easy to find as far as on LinkedIn, and your details are out there. So anybody who wants to engage with Natasha and Dave, strongly encourage you to do so. I think they've clearly demonstrated throughout our time here today. They know the space, they're passionate about the space, and more importantly, they're doing really cool, innovative things in the space. I'm incredibly thankful for our ability to partner with both of you. And so again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your contributions. And with that said, thank you for all who attended and went on this 1-hour tour with us. Loved every minute of it. Thank you both. Thank you all.
Thanks, Eric.